Welcome to the 35th episode of Renegade Marketers Live, a show that promises to be long on marketing insights and short on overhyped buzzwords. We'll be drinking in the latest tactics and the coolest gin. Yep, this may be the only live marketing show that also features a gin tasting. This show is being live streamed via our friends at Restream. And if you want to drink along at home, today we're tasting Drumshanbo again and Stubbornly Different Gin. I'm your host, Drew Neiser, live from my home studio in New York City. It's great to be with you today, this St. Patrick's Day. Now, when we gather a group of CMOs, as we do almost every week with CMO Huddles, one challenge seems to rise to the surface a lot. Like right now, every single session, it's recruiting. It is a flat out nightmare for CMOs right now. Finding experienced talent is hard enough. And then when you do, a bidding war ensues. I was talking to a CMO literally last week who had hired a potential VP of marketing who had accepted the job, who was a day away from starting and then rescinded because their current employee had countered with a raise that was $30,000 over the CMO's highest budget range for the role. There's no easy solutions to this gross imbalance right now between supply and demand, but it is such a hot topic that we thought it would help even just to have a moment of empathy with the other CMOs because you're probably facing the same challenge. But we're going to talk about what you can do right now to recruit talent despite the obstacles. And with that, let's bring on Allison Munro, CMO of Vena Solutions. Hey, there you are. Hello, Allison. How are you?
I'm good, Drew. How are you?
Awesome. So first of all, where are you?
I am in the forest just outside of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, thanks to remote work.
I love it. All right. Well, see, this brings an international notion to Renegade Marketers Live. So let's talk about how real the recruiting challenge is for you right now, both, either within marketing or as a whole for Vena.
Yes, Drew. And I think, as you said, it's real. It's not only real for us as an organization, I think it's real for the market at large. Like, we've just survived, and dare I say survived, or come out of the other side of a global pandemic that has forced us to arrive in the digital era. And now remote work is finally here more broadly, as I benefit from today. And so who people work for, or who they work with, what they work towards, and if they work at all for someone else is all to be considered in the employee market. And so it should be. And so I like to think working professionals have been liberated from dissatisfaction. And that's a tremendous swing of the pendulum, generally speaking. Funny enough, Simon Sinek today just sent out a note that reminds us, in the context of work, fulfillment is a right, not a privilege, which I thought was super interesting. And so when we think about recruitment, and to your point, it's not just a people team problem, and it's not just a marketing challenge. It's a company motion. And I think more than ever, it's actually a brand building challenge, which, when I say brand, is to deliver your promise and your experience at every interaction, and then to operationalize that. And I think it's not just at the stage of recruitment. So I know you called out tactics, but I think more holistically, if we think about how we recruit, how we onboard, enable, and grow, not just your business, but your people, that's always been really important. But I think now more than ever, it's really making the difference in who professionals are choosing to work with. Even in those competitive situations of either a retention play or a low supply in a market of high demand. And it can be beyond, some of that salary game, if you think about it around people wanting to be a part of and to belong to something. So, a little bit of a monologue on the upfront, but what I would say is the real challenge is to prioritize your people experience with the same rigor and enthusiasm and focus as your customer experience across the business.
So,
and,
you're preaching to the choir. You know that
yes.
I talk a lot about this, and I talk to CMOs and huddles a lot about this, is that marketing can play a profound role in employees, both in the way they feel about the company that they work for, the pride that they have in the company. But, and I would love to hear proof of that right now. Because if you are a company that in theory has a great brand story and you are delivering a fulfilling culture and all of these things, then in theory, it should be easier for you to recruit right now, or you should have a higher, maybe you might be able to pay less. And I'm curious, where are you on the spectrum of, would you consider your company is at the place where you want it to be from delivering this kind of experience that will allow you to recruit employees based on the notion they could be fulfilled versus they're going to make another $30,000?
Yeah, no, I think the disclaimer is that I would always say it's a better, never best. But fortunately, when I started Vena 2 years ago, and it does come from the top, our CEO had a very strong commitment to building that employee experience and that employer brand experience. And I do, Drew, think it makes the difference in being able to not pay people less by any means. I think it's really important that people get the compensation they deserve, especially with high skilled professionals that are in high demand. But then how do we think about giving them more? And I really believe in our value of creating a space where people belong and where they can grow as individuals, not just start in that beginning stage. And that really is, for us, something that I think has made the difference in our recruitment, is being able to speak about the organization and the promise and life at our business, but also how you will grow as an individual, which, we know from human resource reports or other surveys that $30,000 in a year, is forgotten and is not actually in a retention strategy. What people might want initially can be outpaced or outsupported by what they have to gain working with your team and your organization, I think, over, the many years that you'd like to keep them in your organization.
And I wonder if we can get to an example of a situation where either in your department or in another department where you were actually able to recruit recently so that folks can feel it. Because again, I believe in this deeply, and I've seen it work. But right now we're at such an extraordinary imbalance, right? Where it's unprecedented because yes, people took themselves out of the market because there for B2B at least, there was no recession. I mean, if anything, all the stimulus money just in wherever it happened, just created all sorts of growth and demand that didn't exist. So businesses, a lot of B2B companies are growing. That's why they have all these openings and the supply went down. So what's happening in your specific case? And maybe there's a story you can share.
Yeah, sure. Let me go right into the marketing team. We're growing our marketing organization, as you said, quite significantly this year. And for the first time, we are now able or motivated as an organization to hire outside of our headquarter city. And so we've been recruiting on a more global scale, which, with our offering of a 3-tiered approach, which is you can be a resident, you can be hybrid, or you can be remote. Now, layer that in with a level of inclusion in making sure that every employee's experience is the same. We, in the last just 3 weeks, actually, have hired 3 senior marketers, 2 from San Diego, 1 from Austin, which is a new sort of motion for us. And again, I think part of it, I know part of it, even from their feedback, was really committed to the opportunity for them to grow. But also, I'm going to go a step further and say, as a marketer who's been focused on building a customer and product experience, again, that employee experience is so important. So we brought on a new director of demand gen. She connected with us and became aware of our brand in a community. So think about the responsibility of leaders or other individuals in the business to show up wherever your brand can be. going through LinkedIn, reaching out, inquiring about the opportunity, learning about our culture. Fascinating thing, when she accepted the offer, her message was to our recruiter that said, my experience with you was so exceptional that it was really part of my decision-making process. And so that's where I go back to marketers who've been focused on the customer experience. Being in a business where you're focused on the employee experience with the same rigor and commitment is equally as important for the long term, and also in your recruitment strategy to bringing in, high performance key players that are going to help change your business.
I love the story. I wonder, in like 1 minute, if you could give a couple of things that made the experience exceptional.
Yes, I think let's go to at scale, being able to go to Glassdoor and seeing feedback and I'm going to go digital there for a second, being able to see our chief people officer show up in every comment, whether good or bad, being able to discover other colleagues in the community in the marketing team, in the community she was a part of, reaching out and having a direct response interaction, managing in a timely basis, not elongating the process because their time is just as valuable as the recruiters, showing up with the same enthusiasm that the candidate has in speaking with you. You are trying to build a relationship and a connection here, not necessarily wean people out of the process. And I think one of the biggest pieces is, again, you can't do 4 and 5 week interview processes anymore. That's just not acceptable. Just like you wouldn't do a 4 or 5 week discovery process with a prospect. How do you, again, show up with that same commitment of a potential new employee as you would a potential new prospect, and deliver that in every single interaction, I think is very key in today's market.
Amazing. And so we're going to stop there. We're going to bring on Adriel. I just want to put a punctuation point on a couple of things that you said. One, this is a really thought through, careful experience. If you want to compete, just like you do for your customers, you're competing for employees. And so that means thinking through every step of the way. All right, Allison, thank you for that. Let's bring on Adriel Sanchez, the CMO at Newsela. So Adriel, listening to what Allison had to say, first of all, hello.
Hey, Drew, how are you?
And where are you?
Like you, I'm in New York City. I'm in Long Island City, to be specific.
Long Island City. Well, we could have recorded it together, but it's a little crowded in here. I don't like people to see behind the curtain. But so when you were listening to Allison and the comments that she had, did it make you say, oh, are we doing all those things too?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of them for sure. I mean, I think one of the things that has been really successful for us is, to Allison's point about, how are candidates assessing options today. And it's not just cash. A lot of it is, am I joining a company that I really believe in? And am I going to do work that makes me feel rewarded every day? Is the company a good culture? Can I fit in here? That's one of the things that we've always leaned into. Newsela is a company that sells instructional content to K through 12 schools. I won't get into much detail, but the mission is kind of built in. You're helping teachers and students every single day. And that over the last 12 to 18 months has been extremely helpful for us in recruiting candidates that may not otherwise have considered a company such as ours. So we've leaned into that heavily. What Allison was saying about collapsing the interview cycle, we've been extremely deliberate about each member of the interview panel focusing on a specific area, so that we are not re-asking the same questions over and over and trusting that the other member of the interview panel has that piece covered, so that we can accelerate some of those, time to offer. So once we've got somebody on the hook, we've been very intentional about how to collapse that time frame.
Yeah. And boy, I want to just double. I mean, if companies aren't doing what you just described there, it seems like such a lost opportunity. I just know our company was guilty of this for years. You'd have 5 different interviews. Everybody had the same sort of questions. And then you would come together and they heard the same answers. And you didn't get this sort of Venn diagram sort of look at the individual. And because speed is such an issue, I wonder, are there different questions that you're asking? Because you're you're recruiting, but you're selling like crazy as well, right? I mean, you've got to get this person excited about working for you, yet you somehow or other, between the resume, the references, and the questions you ask, you have to make sure that they are in fact right for the job.
I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I've always believed that interviews are two-way, right? Like, and I am very explicit about that with candidates up front. I say, this is an opportunity for us to see if you're the right fit for the role, but also an opportunity for you to see if this is the right fit for you. We don't want to bring somebody on that isn't sure about that. So this has got to be mutual. And I certainly leave space and room for candidates to assess that throughout their process. I will say that, when we find somebody that is in later stages and somebody who we really like, one member of the interview panel may be doing more selling than they are asking, right? So like, it depends on where you are in the process, and that's where we adjust as we go along.
Got it. And so what's recruiting looking like for you right now? I mean, open slots, and how long is it taking to fill them?
It is tough. I would say that I think the same challenges a lot of people are facing across the entire business. We have about 150 open roles. So that's a lot we're hiring a lot into sales. We're hiring like wildfire into technology and engineering, some product. The marketing team had about 5 roles open as of the beginning of the year. I think we've got 2 of those filled. 3 of them are still open. And it's taking longer. I mean, it's taking longer. Now, we are aided in the fact that we, we have offices, but we really have no preference in terms of location, at least not in the marketing organization. So it allows us to really recruit anywhere, to some of the things that Allison was saying. That helps. But still, we have to be, and when we find somebody we like, we have to be extremely fast in getting to offer.
Right. And that is, so that's just a new, as Allison used the word, motion that everybody has to get used to, is we're just going to make these decisions. Now, one of the things is, can you make hiring decisions faster and better? Because you can always make them faster.
That is a good question. It's funny, the old adage, fire fast and hire slow, or what was it like, but it's like, but I think some of that is getting like really flipped on its head. I mean, you have to take a chance in some places, and maybe it's not somebody with, the exact profile that you were looking for, but somebody who can grow into the role. Maybe it's somebody who has, one of the things that we've prioritized over the last 12 months is adding diversity of thought into the organization. So where are there people who have different experiences from the people that are currently in the organization? As a company that sells into K through 12, we try to keep a nice mix of people with classroom experience and people with experience outside of classrooms that bring in best practices from other industries. So is there a role that, for instance, a former educator is looking to, that can join the team and do effectively? So we are being creative about the profiles that we're welcoming in.
So that's interesting. And I wondered about that, because certainly bringing in someone who may not be an exact fit for the specs, but could be a great fit for the company. But then you have training challenges and you have managerial challenges, right? Because they don't know how to do the tasks that you need them to do. And so this is one of the things that I noticed is some folks would hire a more junior person and then sort of train them into the role. But all that means is it's either more pressure on you or more pressure on your direct reports, because they have to do more training, right? There's more hand-holding. So how do you manage that in the mix of things?
You got to do it eyes wide open. I say to my managers all the time, if you hire this individual, that is not the exact profile that you were looking for, and it isn't perhaps the level of experience that you're looking for. So think about the things that you are not going to be able to do yourself, because you're going to be spending more time bringing this person on board. So think about that and just go into that eyes wide open. You're going to need to dedicate 15% of your week to bringing this person up to speed. It's a good investment, but it does mean that you don't have that time to do other things, right? Like, and I don't want you burning out either. So just prioritize your workload to accommodate for that.
Which is a really good thing for you to do, but it also means that your priorities are going to have to change too. You're going to have to settle for getting a little bit less out of your direct report.
That's right. That's right. And you know, if you look across the organization, we say, okay, are we okay with that? Can we absorb that impact?
Right. Right. Okay. Really interesting. And I want to get the whole group together in a second, but we're going to talk to Kristin next. So stay with us. So let's welcome Kristin Fornal, CMO at I Am Robotics. Hello, Kristin.
Hi, Drew. How are you doing?
Good. And so first of all, I'm doing great, but where are you?
I am in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
All right. Well, we're heavily East Coast. We're all on the Eastern time zone, and I know in our pre-conversations that recruiting is a challenge for you, and that is what we're talking about. And there's a lot of CMOs out there right now who are going, "Oh my God, just tell me it's as bad for you as it is for me." So talk a little bit about what's going on and how your recruiting challenge, what it looks like right now.
Absolutely. Recruiting is a challenge for us. We have 3 open roles that have only been out for about a couple of months. And finding the specialized talent that is within our industry is what really is proving to be hard for us. And in helping to curtail this and make the hiring process better for the marketing department, at least, I like to use Brian Balfour came up with the T-shaped marketer. And instead of looking for a specialist in one area, the T-shaped marketer kind of lays out foundational marketing knowledge and key areas that you need to know. And then you go deep into a marketing vertical that you either have developed over years of experience, or you were trained professionally or went to school for. I found this to be great, especially for team building, because then you're able to build more of a cohesive team where everyone can better understand how they're contributing to the entire marketing strategy. And you're not just getting hyper specialized talent. They're more of a marketing generalist with knowledge that's deep in one area.
And I'm curious, as you know, this is since you're pulling up the rear, if you will, on these 3 conversations. And I'm wondering what you heard between, the first 2 CMOs, what you heard resonated with you, with Allison and Adriel.
Absolutely. So Allison's point about, and Adriel reinforced this, it's the experience of the candidates that are coming through. And I know a lot of people think that culture fit is a little cliche, but it really isn't. The great resignation or great renegotiation, however you want to spin it, right? People are looking at that purpose-driven work-life balance. And companies, it's harder and harder because you do need to still stand out in a digital world, even with remote work, and bringing in the different tools to be able to support a remote environment or a hybrid environment. So I definitely agree with that end experience for candidates coming through the process. And then too, as Adriel had mentioned, collapsing that interview cycle, that process as well. So that T-shaped marketer structure kind of lays out the foundational knowledge that the marketers need to have. And then the deep vertical space is also identified. And that helps the other people in the interviewing panel know where their questions are going to fall because all of the departments, when you're pulling together candidates, we provide questions, whether it fits within the culture or it fits directly to technical knowledge or industry knowledge, to kind of help get different viewpoints and aspects. And then, as Adriel also mentioned, providing that time for the candidate to ask you questions is really important too.
And so I'm curious, and I want to get this opinion of everybody, but we've heard the word culture a lot now. And just as it is difficult to, in an interview process, really assess the human on the other side of the Zoom conversation where you're having the interview, but how is the individual seeing your culture come through? And what are the signals that, and in the case of IM Robotics, what are the cultural signals that you want them to see?
A lot of it is how our team works together, and the different departments, cross-department communications. A lot of people, when they always ask like what the culture's like here, and people aren't just looking for those tangible results of, yes, we get fed lunch every day catered, or free snacks, or stand-up desks, or double. All of that is nice, but like Allison mentioned earlier, the culture drives from the CEO down. And when you have a CEO that cares about the team as a whole, and we're all working towards the same goals and direction, I think that comes through in the discussions that you're having in the salesy part of the interview.
Okay. It's funny. I mean, I have never been very good when people ask me, so what's the culture of Renegade like? I always say, go ask an employee. I don't know. And that's probably a weakness on Renegade's part, but it's a curious thing, and we know it's important. And we're going to also talk about, I think, how do you build culture when you don't have an office anymore? And so much of culture was driven by the physical setting of the people being able to interact. So I think that's a really another difficult challenge that's been added to this mix, right? You used to be able to go, oh, there's the ping pong table in the gaming room and in the food room, and look at all these great places where people can meet casually. If half your workforce is never in the office, in fact, you might even not meet them for 6 months, then you have all sorts of different, right, culture building challenges. And so when you look at it, is there anything as you look ahead that you might do differently from a recruiting standpoint to help fill those empty spots right now?
Networking is really key. And I think that is going to be where a lot of people really find their jobs in the right fit. A lot of the different areas where we go, we have a great robotics community here in Pittsburgh that we're able to go and attend different events and talk with other robotic employees and see if they're happy or interested or looking. But everyone seems to be, our ecosystem here is pretty supportive. And I think a lot of people, it's all about referrals and recommendations. People like to work with people that they know and have worked with in the past.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, and it's funny because Allison mentioned that as well, as about this being part of a community, in your case, the robotics community, all those Carnegie Mellon people. And I know there's even a chapter that there's a youth, high school group, right, of robotics things that was started by the guy who founded Segway, who's, I'm forgetting the name of it, but I imagine they have a pretty strong Pittsburgh chapter. So anyway, all right. Perfect. We are going to take a break at this second. I'm going to I want to plug CMO Huddles for a second. That's what I want to do. It was launched in 2020. CMO Huddles is an invitation-only subscription service that brings together an elite group of CMOs to share, care, and dare each other to greatness. One CMO described Huddles as timely conversations between smart peers in a trusted environment, while another called it a cross between an expert workshop and a therapy session. So Allison, Adriel, Kristin, you've all been huddlers. Feel free to share how this might align with your experience or your experience in huddles. Anybody want to volunteer?
I can volunteer, Drew. I think what's been awesome about Huddles versus, dare I say, some other C-level or marketing communities is there's such a diverse representation of folks from different industry, different stages, that really share and care together in a way that I think is very unique to CMO Huddles. So if you're not a member, I don't know what the CTA is, Drew, but I can tell you that it really is unique, again, because of that sort of uniqueness of folks coming together that is not from sort of the same investor or the same industry per se. So that's been great.
Oh, I love that. And I really think it's so important because, and sometimes we have big companies and small companies, although we try to, but there's so much learning to be had from just different approaches in B2B land. Adriel, anything to add?
I would just say that, like, what is different about CMO Huddles is just how thoughtful and committed Drew specifically is to making sure that everybody is getting value out of this experience. From the very first time that I expressed interest in joining the huddle, Drew made sure that he had an individual conversation. Well, what are you really trying to get out? And like, here's some advice on the types of people you should connect with, and made the introductions and gave me some recommendations on the kinds of huddles that I should really prioritize being a part of. So that from the start was just different than some of the CMO groups out there.
Thank you for that, and I also am excited to get you to lead our product-led growth bonus huddle. So I appreciate that. Okay, Kristin, anything else to add to this love fest?
It has been a great experience, and I love being able to tap into like-minded people to ask for commentary, whether it be on the recent ones, MarTech, or just small issues that you might be having day to day, and having a channel to be able to ask for advice on or recommendations.
Love it. Okay, we are going to take actual break because we all have to go grab our gins. So we're going to do that. So Melissa, let's roll the video.
I love the way that you are able to bring together experts and practitioners to share their experiences and to accelerate learning.
Just by listening, I've tripled my experience.
It's a great way to have these conversations with your peers.
Even if you miss, an actual live session, just the capture you guys do of the notes, the tidbits, the takeaways, just super valuable.
It's such a nice forum to be able to bond with other marketing leaders that are facing the same things that you are.
There's just so much goodness from the learnings and the dialogue and everything else.
So it's really nice to connect to peers that are B2B.
The Slack channel, I think, is amazing. There's just some really helpful ideas and thoughts and things being shared in there as a backstop underneath the huddle actual meetings.
Because of the format of the CMO huddles, there's, maybe 10, 15 people on each of the sub-peer groups, which makes it really easy to build one-on-one relationships.
It's a community that I think I really needed right now, so thank you.
If you're a B2B CMO who can share, care, and dare with the best of them, ping me, Drew Neiser, on LinkedIn, or apply at cmohuddles.com. All right, that's our new video. Hello, Melissa. Love the new video. Happy St. Patrick's Day and Melissa, by the way, for those, is in Ireland right now. It's so awesome. Yay. Okay. So what are we doing here, Melissa?
Okay. So we have two different gins today. One is an American gin that's made in New York, and the other one is an Irish gin. We had two. Drew's showing the bottle right now. That's Stubbornly Different. So that's the New York one. And we're going to start with that one. So let's go ahead and try that. I, being in Galway, think that Drumshanbo is going to be better, but let's see. Okay, so let me just tell you a little bit about Stubbornly Different. It's made in New York. Its mascot is Molly the Mule, a nod to the stubborn in their name. And their saying to go with having their mule mascot is that mules are strong enough to stand on their own and not easily reproduced. So there are only 6 botanicals in this gin. And it's not as strong in the juniper. It's more of an American style gin than a London gin. So it should be a little bit more palatable. Let's try it.
I really like it. Right?
It tastes like spicy.
Yeah, it's lovely. I'm so excited to know it's a New York gin. Because here's a funny story. So my daughter's wedding, which is in New York, they can only serve New York beverages. So we'll have to get Stubbornly Different there. So sorry, Drumshanbo. But okay, that's Stubbornly Different. What do you guys think?
I would say this is the first time I've ever had gin straight. And it's like you can really appreciate all that's going on in there. You know what I mean? There's a lot going on in there.
Yeah. Well, it really makes a difference if you had it chilled and your glass is chilled, because it's just a little more viscous, and it does, the flavor, I think, pops really nicely. And this is, it's great. And I'm a super Drumshanbo fan, but this is giving it a run for the money. Okay.
Definitely. All right. Now let's try Drumshanbo. So Drumshanbo is made in County Leitrim, which is kind of like center west in Ireland. Their mascot is the jackalope, which is the progeny of a jackrabbit and an antelope. And this creature is said to be born when lightning strikes. So for the founder, PJ Rigney, it symbolizes a flash of inspiration, the gin itself. And one of the key botanical in it that is for its name, Drumshanbo gunpowder gin, it's gunpowder tea. That's the botanical in that. It's a Chinese tea that doesn't taste like gunpowder, but it looks like gunpowder. So you might still get the gunpowder taste if you're
it finishes
a
differently.
A placebo bit, yeah.
No, but the finish of it, when you're done with this gin, it sort of stays in the back of your mouth, and there's that, and I think it's the tea part of it that just sort of stays with you. I don't know. What do you think?
I like that one. It's very herbal. Like you can really kind of like sense the different spices within that flavor profile. Whereas the Stubbornly Different was very citrusy for me.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I might, I dare we say herbaceous? I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this Drumshanbo we've had on the show. In fact, we did we had the one of the bartenders live from the show from Ireland on it. So, but now that Melissa's in Ireland, maybe it's time that we bring on our botanical expert.
Yep. So Nicole's going to talk about Meadowsweet, which is one of the other botanicals in Drumshanbo gin. Take it away, Nicole.
Hey, Nicole.
Hi, everyone. So Meadowsweet, also known as Queen of the Meadow, is a herb in the rose family. So the Meadowsweet found in Drumshanbo actually comes from the fields in County Leitrim. And guess what? If you are worried about getting a hangover, you won't if you're having Meadowsweet, because it's an anti-inflammatory, and its salicylic acid was the basis of what we now know as aspirin.
Very cool. So it's like a built-in, drink it in, and so Melissa, I guess. Well, but yeah, especially today. All right, Nicole, thank you very much for that fun fact about Meadowsweet. We'll see you later. Okay, well, you two need to vote on what your preference is. Which one did you like better?
Oh, wow.
I know. They're both good.
I'm going to say the Drumshanbo.
Yeah,
I really like, I think the floral was a little bit, I think just like it's more interesting than the other one. A little more subtle maybe than the other one. I don't know. Like I'm usually a brown liquor drinker, but I think you've gotten me into gin now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then I would say also try the Bar Hill Old Tom, because that'll be the perfect sort of from bourbon to gin. It's the right in between. Kristin, what'd you think? Which one?
I really like the Drumshanbo too.
There you go. It's a winner. And by the way, if you make the Drumshanbo martini, it's really just perfect. It really is. So
that's
there
exactly
it is.
what was going through my mind.
Yes, exactly. No,
That's some left. Maybe that'll be
yeah,
that.
I know. And you were like, you got the lucky bottle there. All right. Well, Melissa, anything else we need to cover? Or we'll get back to the show.
I'll just say that in Irish, to say cheers, you say sláinte. So sláinte, everyone.
Sláinte. All right. There it is. All right. So let's bring back. Let's get things going. Let's bring back Allison too. We just couldn't get it to Toronto. I'm sorry. Okay. So let's talk about a couple of things. One, I mentioned at the top of the show that salaries have skyrocketed like crazy. Are you all seeing that in real time? And how are you dealing with it? I mean, is it just a question of you have no choice? You have to match everything? Anybody want to jump in on
the great renegotiation time? I know for us, we try to plan out our hires as best as we can. So during our budget and corporate goal planning sessions, we also look at how many more people we need to hire to get to that point. And so we build it into our budgets, and we look at then to forecasts from sales to then be able to support that growth in that movement.
Right. But I've been hearing, and again, I would love Adriel and Allison to weigh in on this. What I've been hearing is that the numbers are budget busting, and they're needing evidence that, that a lot of CMOs have asked, and this has come up on Slack and other things. It's like, Drew, is there anybody out there that is showing that this level, like a product marketer, is just absolutely now at this end of a spectrum that was so much higher than it was where you started, and this is just wreaking havoc with budgets? Kristin?
Yeah,
I'll have to see.
Allison?
I can jump in and say that I think, when you think of a leveling of an organization, and Kristin, to your point of doing all that great planning and even being agile in your reforecasting, there is no precedence, I think, for what senior product marketers are demanding and getting right now in market. And so that can create tension, not only in the budgeting process, but in your people person negotiation and with your recruiters. I actually heard a story of a fellow CMO who ended up hiring a VP of product marketing, and dare I put this out in the universe, but that actually received higher compensation than they were. And that was a choice they had to make in order to do what was right for the business. Now, I think for that employee, what does that mean for your future? There's a lot of, I think, unprecedented space there. And how do you grow and what do you do next? So, thinking about what they can do and their potential go forward has to be part of that mix. Otherwise, it's a short-term fix that will have a challenge in your modeling.
Yeah. I mean, what I imagine here is you bring in somebody at a replacement role, and it's $30,000 to $50,000 more than what that person got before. Then you have to go back to every single employee who's at the same level, and you either level set or you're going to lose that employee and have another problem. But once you do the level set, then your budget is just chaos. And of course, and I can make this worse because then you don't have the budget, and then you don't hire, and then the people that you have burn out. So what are you doing? I mean, are these conversations that you're having with your CFO and your CEO that's saying, look, this is just the reality of the marketplace right now, and we have a choice. We can either hire more junior people and try to make it work, or we can pay top dollar to get the talent that we need. Is that the conversation, Adriel?
I mean, it's certainly the conversation is happening. We certainly pay competitively. we are being extremely thoughtful about the implications of just throwing massive amounts of cash at people, and what that does to the equity implications for the other members of the team. I am not going to bring someone in at 25% more than what their peer making the same job makes. Because now we got to figure out whether everybody in the organization is at market or close to market, right? Like, so we're having those conversations as well during salary planning. But I think we all have to be extremely careful with it, because sometimes the companies that are offering the 30, 40, 50% more aren't going to be around in 12 to 18 months. So
I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of funny money chasing. Right. These aren't businesses that are making money.
Right.
And, they don't have real P&Ls. They don't have ARR that supports the talent. So it's a artificial market.
Yeah.
But you still have to get through it. I mean, we heard in a huddle that, someone with a year of 6 cents, experience was asking for, a year, and was asking for, $150,000, $175,000 because they knew how to do this one tool.
Yeah.
And in fact, the CMO made the decision not to use it because they couldn't afford to hire the person. So they went with a different, ABM provider that had just broader base of installed base of talent. So they could, because that is the whole cost of operation. Anyway, it is an interesting part. And I know, Allison, we started the top of the show talking about culture as sort of a difference maker, but you also said, no matter how good culture is, culture just as tie goes to the culture, not, you still have to be competitive on a salary and benefits basis, period, right?
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think, being able to pay people at fair market value is important. And the added value is, yes, there's ping pong tables and lunch, but it goes beyond that. It's built on belonging and transparency and inclusion, and culture, I think, is a richer definition of what people need in order to thrive. And in my experience, that's as important as, how much people are making and how much potential they have to make into the future.
So let's talk about building culture without office then. And I'm just wondering, how does that come through? I started talking about that with Kristin, but Allison, you've mentioned it several times now. So how do we build culture when you can't physically show it?
That's a question for me.
Yeah.
I have a lot of thoughts there, because I'll give you my example. I started at Vena as an organization who was largely working side by side in hundreds of folks. And then 6 weeks later, we went to lockdown. And I would say most of my team I've hired, during a state where we can't be in the same room safely. And so it's a continuous challenge of what is culture. So I think initially you lean into, let's do a bunch of Zoom games and let's spend time with each other and get to know each other. I think where it really has netted out and is about building alignment documented across the business. So we have our core values defined. We use our core values to build our plans by department. Those departmental plans align across the business. They cascade down to every individual. We bring our values into our conversation of, customer trust, one team. It's part of how we operate every day. And it's a fabric that connects individuals who are working together to do really special things, whether that means we're, everything's going amazing and we're growing, or we're running into bumps and challenges as you do in business. And I think it's that fabric that allows us to connect and do great work together, regardless of where we are in the world. And that's been a 2-year process of a bunch of extra Zoom socials that I think really come down to the way you work and the way you connect and the way you communicate.
Adriel, anything to add to that in terms of culture building in this new hybrid remote world?
Yeah, we had one of our board members who said something interesting a few weeks ago. Said like it used to be that you went to the office for work and then you went offsite for culture. Like now you're going to the office for culture and you're going home for work. But like in terms of how to build it, I don't know. I think the culture of our organization as being extremely respectful, professional, collaborative, challenging. I think that comes across in your interactions with people, regardless of whether you are at home or remote. And I think people appreciate that.
Okay. Well, this is the moment in the show when we ask, what would Ben Franklin say? And if you wonder why I keep referencing and why I'm so obsessed with Ben Franklin, I am not alone. Ken Burns' new documentary was just announced on Franklin, and it starts on April 4th. Who could be more excited about that than me? Melissa is laughing right now. So Ben would say, if you want to convince, speak of interest, not of reason. And that's what we've been talking a lot about. It's not about the money. It's about the culture. It's about the experience. It's about the things that you will be able to do when you get to the company. And I guess where I want to sort of get this back to is, because we could have a recruiting conversation with an HR person, but there's something interesting about doing it with a marketing person, because you're thinking bigger about the way the brand is perceived among employees, customers, and prospects. And so let's just talk about this intersection now. And are you feeling it more than you might have in jobs earlier, where suddenly recruiting is an issue for everybody, right? In every department, including your own. So the role of brand, and are you having more conversations internally in this intersection of marketing and recruiting? Anybody want to jump in on that one?
We are definitely.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Go ahead, Kristin.
We're definitely working on kind of sharing what our culture is and highlighting people through our website and social platforms, different events that we go to, the networking events I mentioned. We definitely allocate marketing time to help our recruiting efforts.
Allison?
Yeah, I think one of the things I mentioned when we first started chatting is we've actually built it into our business priorities. So we have dedicated time and resource to building what we're calling our employee internal and recruitment brand. And I think, like Kristin, that shows up on social media through recognition. We actually just launched our webpage of Life at Vena, which is entirely dedicated to recruitment and what it means to join our organization, with our current team and people at the forefront of that. So I know product-led growth was an earlier conversation. How do you lead with not just marketing claims, but social proof? And in this case, that social proof are the people that currently make up your organization.
And as you're talking, how does the employer brand connect to the, we'll call it the Vena brand that goes out to the world to get, customers, prospects, and how is there an interlinking there?
I would say our core values and our promise. So our core values are actually core: customer trust, one team, respect and authenticity, and execution excellence. And that is, again, consistent throughout everything we do, whether it's our product, whether it's our marketing, whether it's our employee experience. That is the connective tissue. When you layer in our promise, and our promise is to help you grow personally, professionally, and business-oriented goals. That's true for what we promise our customers. That's true for what we promise our people, and it's true for what we promise each other. And again, when I speak of the fabric, it's not something to document and kind of put on a wall. It's something to live and breathe every day. And we hold ourselves, accountable to that in our operational rhythm in all we do.
I love that. So it's so interesting, because you could say help you grow, and you could do full stop on just as an employee brand, right? We're here to help you grow. And what's so interesting about it, if that was it, and that was the only marketing promise that you had to employees to help you grow, is that customers would feel that, because your employees would feel good. I'm thinking about an insurance company, someone I interviewed several years ago, and their marketing was simply this: happy employees equal happy customers. That was their whole marketing program. And so everything was about employees and the quirkiness of employees and them being happy. But how long has that sort of, if you will, promise of help you grow been in place?
It's actually our plan to grow, which ties into our product as a complete planning. solution for organizations. And so we really, with Hunter Madeley, our new CEO coming in 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now, just ahead of me, that was a big part of our exercise is who are we, what is our promise, and what are our values, and how do we bring that out in everything we do? What's interesting is, to your point, Drew, it's the same message we take to market to our prospects and customers as it is, to our team. And even something as simple as, when you think about your company plans, our CEO requires the number one sort of MVP or OKR or whatever it is you want to call it. We start with our people. Then we move to our customers, right? So we prioritize our people with our profits, if I were to summarize that way, because what is our business without our team? And again, I've been really fortunate being at Vena, because that's been a unique experience for me as a marketer, as well as a colleague and an employee. And it's been incredibly refreshing. So that's definitely been new for me.
And it's such music to my ears. And I just, as you're listening to this show and digesting it, if you can draw a through line from what you are promising to employees to what you are promising to customers to what you're promising prospects, life is a lot easier for you as a marketer. It just is. Okay. So, a lot of interesting things have come up in this show and other things. So, Adriel, as we're some final words of wisdom, if you will, for CMOs in the recruiting strategy, a couple of takeaways for them. What do you got?
Always be hiring. Talk to every single person that someone may bring up as an interesting person, even if you don't have a role open. Make the time to talk to that person. I've hired so many people that I had just had a conversation with years ago. And also, as you go through your career, keep a bench of contractors, consultants, people with unique experiences that can come in and fill gaps until you have a full-time hire on board. Those are the two things that have worked very well for me over this period.
And I'm so glad you mentioned both of those. Always be hiring. It's a rhythm, and it's not just for this moment. And the bench and this is sort of the question of, there's going to be this gap right now because it's so hard to recruit. Even if you speed up your process, it's just there aren't enough qualified candidates out there. So the way you fill in those gaps is probably going to be through outsourcing some of it, at least on a temporary basis. And if you have a list of contractors, it's a lot easier. Okay. Kristin, what's a tip or two, final words of advice?
I think sometimes it's better to hire for the specific and technical marketing skills and then teach the industry. I find that to sometimes be easier than really looking for that needle in the haystack.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can teach anybody in the industry, but it's sometimes hard to, if you don't know product marketing or you don't know demand generation motions, it just is, the learning curve is higher. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's see, Allison, your tips.
I would say my tip, and probably where I started, is hiring is not an HR problem or a people problem. It is a leader's problem, a department level challenge, an opportunity to disseminate your vision, show up where your community is, and really sort of advocate for the opportunities at your organization.
It's so, I thank you for sharing that. And I so agree with you. And it is part of one of the reasons, marketers as a rule tend to be out more than some of the other departments, and you tend to represent your brands more than other departments. But right now, everybody needs to be out there representing their company, particularly in the communities that you all three are describing. I want to share one other sort of tip that we heard in a huddle this week that just cracked me up. What this person is doing for every role that they have open is they are offering 2 people the job every time. And this is exactly how everybody else reacted. What? And they have made the decision, because generally about 50% of the folks are actually showing up. But if both of them did show up, they'd be fine with it. So I thought, oh my gosh, there it is. Hire 2 to get 1 or to get 2, because it's such a crazy marketplace right now. So I thought that was it. So, all right. Well, thank you, Allison, Adriel, Kristin. You're all great sports. I love the conversation today. Thank you, audience, for staying with us. Please join us in 2 weeks when we will be talking about employee culture, continuing the conversation that we started today, and wellness with Mandy Dhaliwal and Julie Kaplan. All right, cue the music. Renegade Marketers Live is produced by Melissa Caffrey. Our intern is Laura Parkin. Our botanical expert is Nicole Hernandez. For show notes, past episodes, and the latest on my new book, Renegade Marketing, 12 Steps to Building Unbeatable B2B Brands, please visit renegade.com. I'm your host, Drew Neiser, and until next time, keep those Renegade thinking caps on and strong.